is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Hackin Cast, Hack the Interview. We're here with Douglas Brush. How are you doing today, Doug?
I'm doing well. Am I sounding better now?
Yes.
You're sounding great. We're excited to have you here, too. This is a Hackin Cast I'm really excited for.
Yeah, that's the stuff I love doing.
We're always excited to have Doug on our Hackin Cast. And you know what I'm even more excited about?
What's that?
We're all going to see Doug in person in Reno.
It almost felt like it was not going to happen this year. I'm so excited. I'm so amped about it. It's my first conference outside of the virtual world. I miss it dearly.
Yeah. You know what? We are so excited. I talked to Nadine a few days ago too, and Nadine Tanner is planning to come in. So I'm pretty excited. We've got a great lineup. We really have a great lineup of speakers, of invited speakers. We're working through our CFPs. By the way, the CFP is still open if people would like to submit talks. But do you know Josh Wright? Doug, have you been around Josh Wright?
Names from oh yeah, I know, but I don't think we've ever met in person.
He'll be with us. Paul Vixie will be with us. Naomi Buckwalter, Kelly Tarala.
Okay.
You guys know James and Kelly. Yeah. Kelly has agreed to speak with us, which is really exciting. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I can look at it. I am super excited about this event.
Oh, yeah.
Russell Eubanks. Love Russell. Jake Williams, Alyssa Torres, Kevin Johnson, Wolf Grolick. I know I mispronounce his name every time. He was with us last week on the Blue Team Roundup. He's speaking. George Orchias is also speaking with us. Lee and Shelley Clements. Kip Boyle. I mean, we got a great lineup. This is not the webcast. This is the pre-show banter. We show up because you show up. You show up because we show up. And we like to say it's a vicious cycle, but it's a good cycle. And we're always happy to.
The vicious cycle that we all love so much. And if this is your first webcast with us, thank you for being here and welcome. I want to invite everybody to join us on our Discord server. We have a Wild West Hackin Fest training and webcast Discord server. So we use this Discord server for all of the public trainings we do. All the classes get private channels for their courses, but we also use it during all of our webcasts. We've just shared the link to it in the GoToWebinar chat. So once you join the Discord channel, it does take a minute for it to allow you to post, but once you can, go ahead and join us in the live chat channel. It's the one with the little steer head. And that's where we do all of our webcasts. So it's a great place to get to know fellow attendees. And you can also talk to us there as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I suppose I should change my name here, huh? So people know that I'm Belda. I'm also the deputy.
I don't know if I did.
Yes, I love that we all have nicknames.
I love it too. I love it too. This is such a fun place to be. We are a fun group of people. Right, Ryan?
They are pretty fun.
And speaking of fun, back to Reno. Not only do we have an amazing lineup of speakers and different courses going on, but we also have a lot of fun things planned. And I gotta say, the one I am most excited for is the mechanical bull.
Yes,
I think I'm gonna, running around trying to convince people they need to get a shot at, riding the bull.
Is there gonna be a competition?
I think Velda, there has been talks of an award, right?
Well, there's a possibility of an award. Yeah.
A major award.
Competition, really?
Do you know how to ride a mechanical bull, Doug?
Wait, what was the question?
Do you know how to ride a mechanical bull?
Oh God. I'll check my insurance policies to see if I'm allowed to.
No stunt work.
My wife actually calls me like a bull in a china shop, so I don't know if that's that helps or not. I just can't see it going well. But I'll give it a try. I'll try anything. So.
Woohoo! Bring your chaps, Doug. Bring your chaps. I see
Yeah,
some
we're back
friends
in the
here.
saddle, and now you got to try and stay in the saddle.
Yes.
Right.
It is so fun, though. I mean, yes, we're going to do that. We're going to provide a steak dinner for people who show up on site. You know, we provide lunch every day. It's included with your registration. We're going to get a cool T-shirt, kind of like the cool T-shirt we had from last year. So we'll be doing that. You know, we are going to be observing all the rules set forth by the state of Nevada and the local county or local state, the state and local officials. So we will be, you know, asking you to wear a mask. We will be providing tons of hand sanitizer. You know, we're gonna do whatever we can to make sure you're safe, but also make sure you're having some fun, because that's what the bottom line is it's all being together and learning, and you know that's what this is all about, right? So it's gonna be really cool. It's gonna be really cool.
We have a very special group of people in our community that we call the Nerd Herders. They actually name themselves that, which is really awesome. But the Nerd Herders are just people who have gone above and beyond to help the community and us as well. They also get little introductions to special things that we do before anyone else does. So we rely on them for not only, you know, their help, but their input as well. And if you want to learn more about becoming a Nerd Herder, we do have a Nerd Herder section of our Discord server. And one of those channels explains what a Nerd Herder is and what you can do to become one.
I started planning some local meetups here in Denver and Boulder, and it was weird. It's like, wait, because I just got my second shot last Thursday. So
Right.
I'm kind of cleared. And so a lot of people are getting theirs here in Colorado. Over age of 16 is going to be available in Colorado open to everybody basically on Friday. So we expect a big rush of people to get them, and hopefully everybody will have both shots, if not the one shot, mid-May. That'd be awesome by Memorial Day. So people are getting back out there planning events, which is awesome. And the last couple of days, I've been obviously we were talking about Wild West Hacking Fest, but I've been got my list of all the other conferences, and it's good to see a lot of them. The location of my spreadsheet being changed from virtual to the actual place. So hopefully to start getting out there on the road again. No, that's how you and I met. That's how I was thinking about this. I'm going to talk about the presentation, but the importance of networking in our industry. My wife's kind of on the market looking for stuff outside of cyber, and I was saying, gosh, it's got to be tough not to be able to get out there and meet people and get to just. It's much harder to meet people from behind a keyboard.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. What does your wife do now? Out of curiosity.
So she's been in product design, particularly around industrial lighting and design for the last, 10 years. Before that, she was in retail and fashion sales. And so she worked with all the big brands, selling to major markets. So now she's kind of in the sales and product development, and hopefully finding some stuff in Colorado. Obviously, Colorado's got a big tech center, but we're trying to find stuff that's also not just keyboard and computer stuff.
Thank you all for showing up. We're glad to have Doug with us today. Thank you, Nerd Herders. Thank you, everyone who's joined the webcast.
It is awesome to be back here, but also soon to be back on the road and doing these things live. So I'm definitely looking forward to Wild West Hacking Fest in Reno. Hope to see you folks there. As Velda mentioned, there's some great organizations to sponsor and support. I've obviously been here and talked a couple times now about mental health, both at last year's Wild West Hacking Fest and on the webcast. So definitely just check out Mental Health Hackers. I'm, fingers crossed, going to be part of a co-chair committee at Splunk, where I work for the employee resource group on mental health. And Mental Health Hackers is going to be definitely an organization I champion to start working with internally and making sure they get what they need when we go to conferences, because it's obviously an important thing. So let's get to it. So this is the interviewee field manual. So how to hack the interview. I get asked a lot, how do I get my foot in the door? What do I do after I get my foot in the door and be successful in my interviews? And I've seen a lot of things that are, I wouldn't say mistakes, I hate to demify it so much, but things that can be improved on that a lot of people do that they might not know, not being able to see the forest through the trees. I've been on both sides of it. I've interviewed for places, I've also interviewed hundreds of people. So there's common things that I realize I probably look for in interviewing people, and wanted to kind of share that information with folks that, maybe they can improve their interview process. So for me, my background is I've been doing some form of IT and security for 27 years. I've done tons of security assessment work, red teaming, tons of blue teaming, security operations design, and hundreds, if not thousands, of forensics and incident response investigations, and served in leadership roles where I've even been a CISO. So I've really kind of done it all, so to speak, in this industry. Currently, I'm doing work with Splunk, as you all know, is a data analytics company, and we have software that folks use for security. And I work with organizations to help design their security program from a kind of a CISO to CISO perspective. What are their strategic objectives? How do we operationalize it? How do we fill it with people's processes and then hopefully technology? So that's really where I've kind of done the gamut of my work. But I really got started, I would say, formally in information security in 2007, 2008. But it probably goes back even before that, And one of the themes we're going to talk about is the idea of networking and getting out there, meeting people, building your network and connections, because it all really started back in 1993. My parents had owned a public relations company, and they'd done a lot of corporate communications. I got involved with computers back in the early 80s with the TI 99-4A that they were doing consulting work for Texas Instruments. And they brought home this computer and I played with it. I played Hunt the Wumpus. I learned basic code, things that just don't make it to my resume these days, but it really kind of goes back that far, 40 years ago of being on computers. And it was something that became a lifelong passion. Throughout the 80s, got involved with all the bulletin boards and different things and pulling apart computers, pulling them back together, running up massive telephone bills, dialing into CompuServe from all over the place. It really became a passion of mine. And so as this online world starts evolving in the early 90s, still involved with things like AOL, Prodigy, CompuServe, and as the internet came around, I said, wow, this has a business impact. This is something businesses can use for communications. And I went and spoke at a local business group with my parents, again, where they were doing corporate consulting, and said, hey, look, there's this new thing about the internet. Somebody pulled me aside afterwards and said, that's all great, kid, but I don't think we need this. What's really needed is help with computers and businesses. If you can do that, I think there's a market. Sure enough, within a year, and I graduated high school in 94, and within a year after that, I had started a company doing break, fix, repair, help desk stuff with small businesses and built that out. One of the organizations I was consulting with, and I built out their computer network. And for the joys of any of those who remember the 90s of pulling coax cable and terminating with T connectors and doing that level of fun with IPX, XPX, knows that it was not easy. But getting these computers up and running and getting this graphics design shop that was working with big Fortune 500 companies up and running became really important. So I did really good work with them, and I built out their computer network. And they said, hey, look, we're doing a lot of work with Merrill Lynch out on the road. We're going to these corporate offsites. Could you come in, build out the networks on site? My first answer is yes, not knowing how the hell I would do that, but said yes. Sure enough, I got involved with corporate entities and going in and doing these kind of war rooms and building out networks in hotels and conference spaces all over the world and supporting those networks, and continued to do that for a number of years. One of the other companies that I was working with, because I was very heavily involved with the media and communications folks, again, networking through my parents' company, supporting networks, was a video editor. Sure enough, around 2008, this video editor calls me, get back from my wedding. Merrill Lynch has now kind of disappeared overnight in September. I got married in October 2008. So within a month, I was like, now it's really time to start focusing on the cybersecurity stuff. And sure enough, he said, hey, look, Doug, I need an investigation done on a computer. It's involved in a litigation matter. Will you come do the forensics on it? I did. I agreed to it. It turned out to be a very large environmental spill. It was only second biggest to Exxon Valdez at the time. And it was a ship that went through a waterway. I did an investigation on the computer to determine the timestamps on the DVR, testified in court. And I said, wow, this is really great. And again, this gentleman said, you did a great job. I'm going to refer you to other attorneys. And I had started getting more work and built out the digital forensic group in New York City. I started being kind of involved with different forensic communities at the time, and particularly Forensic Focus was a big kind of bulletin board in web board forum it still is, and started to communicate with folks on that and go out and solve problems for people. People would have issues with, hey, we're not getting this specific reg thing going. And I would help out that. Incidentally enough, around this time is when I first learned about Splunk. And, it just took me recently to kind of fall back on this when I was struggling with understanding parsing logs. And somebody said, I think it was Harlan Carvey actually said, you should check out this Splunk app. Sure enough, I did. I fell in love with it and kind of put that in the back of my brain for a decade or so. But I was involved with the community and I was talking to people and sharing information. And I helped out this gentleman that needed forensic collection in New York City. He was based in a company called Duff & Phelps on the West Coast. I said, sure, I can help you. We scoped it all out. Turned out he didn't need the work done, but he's like, Doug, I'm going to be in New York in a couple of weeks. Let's get coffee. Sure enough, we get coffee. He's like, I would love to bring you and your practice into Duff & Phelps. This lasted for about 8 months of us figuring that out. And I came into Duff & Phelps. There I met somebody else, and we worked on building a practice for doing forensics in New York City and information governance, proactive security work. And that's where I started doing more of the security assessments and CISO type work, and started working with a number of organizations there. And me and this other gentleman went out and started a business at Kraft Kennedy because we got to know folks through networking. And from there, I moved out to Colorado, took some time off, and then reached out to folks I knew at Duff & Phelps that were now at Kivu Consulting. And I said, hey, look, we knew each other from the Duff & Phelps days. How are you doing at Kivu? He said, great, Doug. We're looking to build and hire some people in the West Coast. I said, well, I'm in the middle of the country. And they said, that could be great. Sure enough, I opened up the Kivu office, started doing a ton of incident response work, and got connected with folks at Special Counsel who were a vendor and friends of mine. I left Kivu and went to Special Counsel and built a business there. And then sure enough, things were going great there. And I really enjoyed my time. And about a year ago, I went to Splunk, had just opened an office here in Boulder, and met with some of the folks here in the local security community that were working there and said, hey, we would really love to bring you in. Started talking to them. And sure enough, I came to Splunk. So what's the common theme that you obviously see on all this? And I'm not going to bury the lead, but it's networking. It's getting to know people. If you want the job you want, I can't stress it enough. If you take away nothing else from this presentation, is get out there and meet people. And we were just talking before we hit record on this, or as we hit record before we started the formal presentation. It's hard right now. I get it. But do what you can. Be on Twitter. Help people where you can. Yes, posting funny memes and building a community is great, but if people have problems and you can go to forums and Reddit or other types of things where people are having security problems and you can help them, that is a great way to build your brand and your reputation. Your reputation and who you know will get you a job more than anything else. And if you're saying, hey, Doug, I don't know anything, I'm just starting, that's fine. Take it from me. There are ways to do it. And like I said, I started on Forensic Focus Forum just talking to people. And that led to a job at Splunk almost 15 years later. I had no idea. But it also connected me with a lot of people in the community that I got to know and build things with, and eventually started writing for things for blogs on SANS. And sure enough, it builds this network. So if you do anything else, is get out there and meet people. I did it very heavily when I moved out here to the Denver Boulder area. I volunteered with things at B-Sides. When I had some downtime, I went and made sure all my certs were up to date. I did a lot of networking, and I found that a company down here in Denver, SecureSet, needed folks to teach incident response and forensics. I volunteered to help. So by teaching and volunteering with them, I was able to, kind of build my network and find opportunities. So I really want to give a shout out to those, particularly too in the Denver community. Colorado Equal Security is a Slack forum and a movement that I'm part of. So Alex Woods and Rob Recker are really, really important on that. But I found a community to be involved with locally of security and like-minded folks to network with. And through that, I was able to find people when I was opening the Kivu practice to hire. So getting out there and networking is going to be the most important career decision you can make. And I understand it's tough. If you're an introvert, it can be tough at times. But if you can find ways to do it and find those safe places, and I'm certainly being now more aware of these types of situations as I champion things like mental health and neurodiversity, that going out to bars and networking, drinking there is not the only way. So I'm starting to find and encourage more people, particularly as you do conferences and as you put together meetups, for everything that you do that involves some kind of networking with alcohol. My pledge is to try to find one thing to do that doesn't involve that. And that could be maybe, we play backdoors and breaches together, whatever it is, lock picking, I don't care, but we do something else that's not just involved with drinking and other forms of networking, because I think that's going to be really important to grow folks feeling comfortable becoming in our community. So again, while my focus has been truly on blue teaming, I would say for most of my career, done a fair amount of offensive security, I definitely consider myself a hacker. So full stop, what does that mean? It means that I look at systems and processes and then find ways to exploit them to my benefit. So hacking is about taking things apart, understanding each piece, why it works, and looking for new ways to leverage the pieces of the process to get more. And so I think of things like hacking as kind of this exercise of how can I do this to get a job offer? And that's your objective. Is if you can take that mindset to the job market, I think it could be extremely effective. So I kind of try to break it down in that process, saying, okay, well, how would I use the kind of offensive or defensive attack chain of doing recon to getting to where I need? How can that apply to getting a job? And I really, as I looked apart it and deconstructed that process, I said, wow, there's a lot to be learned there. There's a lot of lineup, because you can create a repeatable process and operationalize it. You increase your chances of success. You reduce the errors. You reduce the stress by not having to recreate the wheel each time. And you just get more efficient at what you're doing. And it allows you to really focus on what's important first. When you get some of the tactical and technical things out of the way, is finding an organization that gives you the best cultural fit. And again, this goes back to the idea of networking and feeling right with somebody and right to the organization. Is you want to build those human connections, and finding a cultural fit can be incredibly important on your job search. So as we kind of go through this attack chain, things are typically looked at as kind of linear, but you'll jump back to earlier stages with each person as you talk to and kind of run some micro plays against each person with some of the same attack methodologies. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Your best lead generation is going to be networking in person, online. You need to get yourself out there. You also want to look at different things about the job description, requirements, and postings and recs. They're often from human resource people. And often they can be Frankenstein monsters from past posts. And I've been guilty of this myself. I'll take a little bit of an incident response analyst here, maybe an offensive security manager here, as we look for different things and copy and paste it and put together this job rec. It's messy. I'm not going to lie that they're not perfect. So if you kind of go in with that mentality, just know that, and they are what they are. We'll talk about ways that you can maybe kind of weaponize that a little bit. I also recommend that people have their resume up to date all the time. Once a month, every 6 months, whatever your cadence, I don't care. It should be a living document. You don't want to wait until you have to submit it to update it. It's kind of a rookie move, because what I find is as you update, as you go along with certain things, and I'll talk about how you outline achievements, it memorializes things in the moment instead of thinking, crap, what did I do that was really successful that I want to talk about? You want to notate these things as you're doing it. So keep that resume up to date at all times. And in a way, I almost encourage you to always be interviewing. And maybe that's not out there formally looking for things, but that mindset of networking and meeting people, looking for other opportunities. And I've encouraged my staff to see what is out there, talk to people. It serves two purposes. First, the feedback they give me is great market competitive intel that I'm not going to get anywhere else. People are recruiting directly or indirectly will have to show some cards. And as a manager, I want to know what other people out there are doing. And second, it might be to bring new ideas back to me. There's things I should be providing my staff, whether that's more money, PTO, training, cultural fits. Maybe they come back with me and say, hey, Acme Security is offering unlimited PTO. That would be really important for me. And I hadn't thought about it. Can we figure that out? And I'd be happy and more productive employee if I had that. So if folks are out there finding out what other folks in the market are doing and bringing it back to me, I'm going to help define what they're doing in better ways. So it's always encourage people to be out there looking. And again, it's not like you're maybe going to have a hard stop of where you are. But also, again, like I said, with not waiting till your resume is needed to be sending to somebody, but it's always be prepared. It's security. It's kind of adapt and overcome, but the the readiness mindset that I have as an incident responder is always there. So let's kind of go through each of the steps. And again, one thing I do want to stress too is also I think about this perspective from a hiring manager. I want to find good talent and not lose them. So for me, is to see value from a hire, it can take 6 to 12 months and the churn costs money. So I really want to make sure I'm making the best hires that I can. So it's kind of a bilateral agreement that if somebody's coming to me, I want to make sure that they're coming at me with their best, and I want them to be prepared because I want to make sure this is a good fit. And that's the other key thing I would say is, as you're networking, as you're meeting people, please be honest. Be honest with yourself and the people you're interviewing with. That's probably the second biggest takeaway from this, if not the first. Yes, what I'm laying out right now is probably kind of social engineering to get a job, and that's fine. Just do not lie. You just better be able to show up on day one of that job as you get it, and be humble, be hungry, be ready to learn. If you BS your way into the door, that's career suicide. Schmooze, yes. Lie, no. All right, so let's jump into each step. First, we're going to look at is your recon stage. So let's assume you've picked out some of your targets at this point. You've been getting out there, you're seeing what other companies are hiring or companies that you may want to work for. You've done some Google, LinkedIn research, OSNet on them. It's just get out there. How does this company look? What does they talk? What's the language they use? What do they feel like online? And that almost central feel, color palettes. Let your brain process and think that all. Kind of drink from the fire hose. You can't do enough research about an organization to get a feel for them. You also want to go to places like Yahoo Finance, MarketWatch, look at their financials and see what maybe analysts say about them. You want to know how this company makes money, if they're privately held, if they're publicly held, if their finances are strong or weak. Have they had an IPO? If not, and when? Are they going to be an acquisition target? This all needs to align with your career goals. If you're on a 5-year plan to be in a boutique shop to build out your career in a practice, and you get in and within 1 year, they're swallowed by another company, how will that impact you? So in this year, I would say specifically right now in the hiring market, expect a lot of product and service M&A deals. So kind of be wary of that if you're in the job market now, because I think my gut reaction is, who am I to say, but some experience here is that I expect there's going to be a lot of deals this year. So you might find yourself getting hired in one company within a year working under another logo, which is fine. Just make sure that's part of your career goals and something that you're ready for. And get to know people who work at these organizations from your network. Talk to them, get a feel. I usually reach out to people that work there to get in the door. Well, first is that I want to get their feel for how the company is going to be. Is it a good fit? Talk to them. Hopefully they're going to be honest with me about what works and what doesn't. But also that person very likely could be getting a hiring bonus if they bring you in. So a lot of them have recruiting bonuses if they refer somebody out. It's a great way for organizations to find talent because it's a good kind of win-win-win really for everybody. So if you can help kind of incentivize that person as an insider and have a little bit of an insider threat, you can get a little bit more of a momentum going in there. Second, I can give you a leg up in the hiring process as being a referral. Recruiters and hiring managers naturally give eyes to folks and talent that have been brought in by somebody else who works at that organization. And if you can, find the hiring manager on that job requisition. This can be really important. Then do some OSNet on them. Find out about them. If you can find videos about them speaking at conferences or just online, get to know their cadence, their body language, maybe regional slang. Kind of get to know them from afar, who this person might be. So if you get the chance to talk down to them later, you're not so cold. As one of my mentors said, that I think of as both an interviewee and somebody who does interviews. He said to me, Doug, when you interview this person, think to yourself, if I got stuck at the airport for 10 hours with this person, could I sit there with them and have coffee or beers? Humans are pack animals. They want to work with people they like. And I heard a saying one time in life that you have to be liked, on time, and on budget, but you only need 2 of those at any given time. So if you can be liked and be genuine about it, it gives you a good head start in most places. Because a lot of the other things about technical skills can be rounded out. But if you're liked and you're a passionate person and you really care about your job and you're a human, that's going to get much further than anything else in the process. And so as you kind of start going through this process, know that the hiring manager will be a gatekeeper to much of the rest of the process going forward. They will likely have to recommend you and advocate for you. And you, as you interview with 1, 2, 5, 7, I think at Splunk I had 8 interviews. I lost track. My last organization, same. I've often had to kind of pitch companies and go through a gauntlet of interviews. But I know that one person that helped bring me in, it could be a point person I can check with, get feedback, know how things are going. And if I can build confidence and camaraderie with them, this is only going to benefit me in the process. So now that you've kind of gathered some, intel, and it's time to move on to weaponization. And the question I've seen and been asked a lot is, as you start to get your shit together now, is like, should I have a cover letter? The short answer is yes. Just do it. And you can reach out to me for some formats. I'm going to post some resources in either a blog post, probably on LinkedIn, and I'll cross post it on Discord with some resources that I've compiled. I just need to tune a few things over the next day or so. But back to the idea of the cover letters. If done right, it will be very effective and let someone know who you are. Beyond your resume, and make it stand out to the hiring manager. If done right, again, we'll talk about some of these formats. It needs to be, well done and with some thought. So, look, when you talk about your resume and your cover letter, clean formats. Have a good use of white space. I personally think non-serif fonts work well. You don't need a full stack of things like your home address, your email, phone number, just concise things right now, because this, again, it just needs to be read kind of quickly. So you want to have lots of bullet points and white space. As you kind of lay it out, make sure that you have an intro paragraph and some sentences and phrases about the professional you are, what you bring to the table. That should stand out as I start to read it. Who is this person, what they're going to do? Because the fun fact, most people skim, they don't read resumes. They kind of skim slower and then they speed up as they go down. So they read quicker and less as they get to pages 2 and 3. So designed for that mentality. So really kind of get into the meat of who you are. Don't bury the lead. Put that at top. So put what you're capable of first, what you're bringing to the table, then get into recent jobs first, then certs and education. I also like to see altruistic things, something that maybe is outside of just the hands-on day-to-day job, but maybe something in the industry, like maybe they mentor for Blue Team Village for DEF CON. Maybe they're a community organizer, a meetup organizer for somewhere in Colorado, or they volunteered at B-Sides. Kind of keep it all short to the point, but I want to see those things that are out there that shows that, again, they're a little bit, who's a human outside of the candidate. And because it really is, again, I want to see that impact that they're going to have. If I hire them, what are they bringing to? What's the impact? So things that can help there is, I don't want to see things like, I work with Splunk Enterprise Security as a T1 SOC analyst. Great, who cares? I expect that. If I'm hiring you for a technical position, that's table stakes. But if you say something like, I utilize Splunk Enterprise Security daily as a Tier 1 analyst and developed IR workflows to reduce mean time to resolve issues from 1 day to 2 hours. All right, now you got my interest. Now there's something there, is that this person's doing something with the technology. This person has shown progress in taking the tools and doing something else. So quantify what you do and how much you do it. Even one of my examples was, I took that I used when in my resume for Splunk was at Special Counsel's data breach practice. I grew the practice from 3 people to 310 months with over $8 million in revenue. Okay, now it's talking about how I've taken things and progressed it. There was quantifiable impact in what I did. So that's kinds of the things that hiring managers look for. And I'll throw up a recent one. This one I actually just worked on yesterday for a friend of mine. I mean, I've anonymized it, and he might be on the call. And it's going to be like, wait, Doug, call me out if I didn't anonymize it. But we were talking about this whole process, and he knew I was speaking to. I said, well, send over what you got, because I kind of want to use it as an example. We kind of see on the left-hand side is I've managed, I have. Okay, great. I see he does cybersecurity with some highlights. Overall, it's laid out pretty well. But if I'm reading it, I'm like, and I'm going to have to flip to the next page to see where he's working. It's not hitting right. But if I look at the one on the right that I've kind of edited, it's like, oh, okay, he's an IR manager. That's the type of job that he's looking for. That's what he's doing currently. it's not just highlights, but it's accomplishments. Like, what has he done at the organization? Experienced and successful and proficient, graduated with honors, these types of things that say, okay, this person's kind of a go-getter. He's not taking things just at face value, but kind of driven a little bit. Those are the types of things that I'm looking for. And again, putting the professional experience right on that first page, and maybe putting all the other stuff where he's worked for years prior on the second page next to some of the other certs. For me, I'm looking at the first page. I want to know who they are, what they're doing now, and the impact. That is where I try to lay these things out and see that he's managing a team of analysts. He's overseeing a quantifiable number of cases on a daily basis. Oh, and after the case, he's doing post-incident remediation, showing some customer thought to the process. So to me, these things kind of stand out. And that's what I look for. And that's what I hope that you're able to kind of start crafting into your resumes. Now, a lot of people say, okay, well, how does this all kind of line up with things on, like, say, LinkedIn? LinkedIn, like it or not, a lot of people call it, business Facebook. I find a lot of value in it because I curate mine really carefully, and I make sure that there's things I manage and about it, but I also make sure my profile is up to date and I'm engaging with folks, whether it's through the podcast, folks that I was going to be speaking with on this talk today. But the idea is to get out there and make sure that landing page looks good and is a good representation of me. So I really want to make sure that the resumes and the LinkedIn profiles match to the T. At least for me as a hiring manager, I cross-reference for gaps and BS. I want to see what that they have on paper matches the detail of what they have on LinkedIn, because I'm looking for disparities. And if everything looks copacetic, okay, that's good. It's just something that there's a little attention to details. Also, on LinkedIn, you can customize your URLs, and that's something I recommend a lot of people do. Again, it's just a small little detail, but instead of Douglas-Brush- 10 numbers or whatever the GUID is that they're throwing in behind those numbers, just having those customized URLs with your name it's just a nice little touch. Again, little things vanity things that can help you set apart. With that too, I highly recommend that you get a professional headshot. There are tons of freelance photographers you can find to get headshots done and edited at very low cost. Things like Craigslist, Fiverr, these different types of whatever online marketplaces you can find these. You can generally get done for a very low cost, but there's a very high rate of return. Because enough with the selfies and the crop photos from weddings and the blurry photos that look like bad mug shots. Take some time to do this. Look your best. Remember, first impressions, you're only going to get one. So as you design your cover letter and resume, I also recommend making, I forgot my little meme that goes with that there. With don't have the Zoolander shot either. So make sure it's a very professional shot. Almost forgot that. Can't miss a meme. So anyway, as you design your cover letter and resume, make sure you're doing one for each rec you're submitting to. Personalize it. So if you're applying for a job at Acme, look at the job rec. Use keywords in that rec and use them and where honest and appropriate in your work history. Again, that phraseology of what they might use of certain terms in security might be different from one organization to another. If you understand how they're doing it and then put it into your work and it's representable and it's true, by all means use it. It helps build that kind of mental social engineering connection with folks in the hiring manager. And also just kind of, again, think of it as like an SEO for words that they want to see that relate to your history. The goal of your cover letter and resume is to get you that first phone call. You're not getting hired off your resume. It's just to get you on the phone with that person to get that phone call. So keep framing it like that. You don't have to boil the ocean and make sure that, it's designed to do what it has to do. So it's the minimal effective dose without detracting from the overall mission. So it doesn't have to be this massive malware deployment of something going on. Again, you're just getting that foothold right now. One of the things I often think about too is running things through Grammarly and having people edit it for you to get those second set of eyes. And just make sure all that's nice and clean, particularly before you submit it, because nothing makes me angrier is when I get, as a hiring manager, cover letters and resumes with sloppy misspellings. It just indicates laziness. So that attention to details is so important to me. So think about that as you go through it. Have a second set of eyes. Check it with Grammarly. Some people hate it. Fine, whatever. Maybe there's another service. You can maybe find an editor on Fiverr. I don't care, but have a second set of eyes look at it. Most importantly, finally, we'll say it again, be honest on your resume. I specifically look for things that I will potentially call out in an interview to smoke screen them. And if they lie, I'll detect that right away. So now we move on to delivery. So now you're ready to fire. And one of the things also say is important too is make sure you're applying to the right person, the right rec. Applicant tracking systems, or ATSs, are notoriously unfriendly, and it can be very easy to submit to the wrong job number or job requisition. It can be similar jobs, different territories that can be worded slightly differently. It's not a perfect science with these computers, so it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. So you really want to make sure that what you're applying for is the right one. Again, that little attention to detail, because that could be a missed opportunity. Obviously, the more that you personalize it, the better. This is where I say, make sure if you can find out who the hiring manager is. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager, I'm really excited about this opportunity, and write something that is tailored towards them and to that individual. People like to feel that they are being paid attention to, and that a little attention to detail that you're showing that you're thinking about them is incredibly important. Have multiple formats ready in advance. So that can be Word, text, PDF, and LinkedIn. Again, some of these sites are going to time out as you're trying to convert your Word doc to text, and then copy and paste and having to start all over. Likely in that process, you'll make another mistake. So by having multiple versions of your payload in your attack kit is important. And it's just going to make your job easier as you get ready to start filling out these things and get your initial foothold, because technology will fail. So be prepared. Because we've seen this happen before, is these application tracking systems will go through your resume and your CV and look for specific keywords, and it does some magic. But be aware of this, that I've talked to folks that have said they had C.I.S.S. Whatever. I might have done the dots wrong, but CIS versus CIS with the periods in it can be treated differently. So he was told, well, you didn't have the CIS certification or CISSP certification. At least I did. It's on my resume. Oh yeah, use periods. Our system didn't pick that up. So because of a computer error, because of how that was read, it was passed over for a job. So make sure that you think about these little details as you kind of go through this, because it's very easy for the computer to say no. So now as it gets in there, you got this delivered, you want to get that first interview. And so likely on your first interview will be with somebody in HR, such as an internal recruiter. They will screen you and decide with the hiring manager if you're going to move forward and with who. So likely the hiring manager will be the first interview. This could be kind of a recruiter and or hiring manager will be the first interviews. So ask a lot of questions. It can't do you any harm to do so. You want to know how this organization does its hiring practice, so ask them. Should not be surprised at any point going forward. You want to know what the schedule is going to be like, who it's going to be with, whether the interviews are going to be remote in person. Obviously, a lot's going to be remote now, but as more organizations do things in person, you might find that as an option. And you want to know which are going to be the technical interviews versus the culture interviews. Those are the ones you do not want to be unprepared for, where you go in and you start talking to somebody about a cultural fit and you're ready to talk about reverse engineering malware. That you can probably fly with it, but you want to know which audience you're preparing for each one of these interviews. I also highly recommend that you have the recruiter's contact info, maybe their cell, their email. It's very likely, again, these applicant tracking systems will be this hub for communications with you and the HR recruiter, meaning you might go to JobVite to submit it. They might get a note that you submitted. They then put in notes on it into JobVite that then you get back. So recently this happened with a friend of mine. He had applied for something, had not heard back. I was like, you haven't heard anything back yet? He's like, no. I was like, that doesn't seem right. I was like, give him a call. He's like, no, I'm not going to call them. I was like, call the goddamn recruiter. Finally, he calls them. Incidentally, it didn't move forward, but he said they had sent him messages. He's like, well, I never got them. Sure enough, he went to his spam folder and there was the recruiter's messages. Due to the fact that many of these application tracking systems will send on behalf of a domain from a different domain, where the return path is different from the domain that's being sent, spam filters will pick it up all the time. So be wary, be proactive, be prepared for these types of things. If you want this job, show interest. All right, so now let's get into the actual interview process itself. And again, take a lot of the cues from the prior steps, recon building and building this buyer profile. Again, I helped a buddy of mine a couple weeks ago. I asked him to cyber stalk each of the 4 interviewers he was speaking to. He's very technical and more of an introvert, and said, "Why? I don't get that." I was like, "You got to nudge it along." He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "It doesn't feel like it's right." I was like, "Are you going to feel more comfortable walking to them blind?" And he said, "Well, no." I said, "So what if you kind of knew a little bit about them and some of their personalities or likes?" He's like, "Okay, fine." And sure enough, he starts looking up some of these folks. He says, "Oh my gosh, one of these guys is into backcountry skiing. He's a backcountry snowboarder. This guy is into craft beer. I'm craft beer. I'm shocked. I know this is in Colorado. You would find these hobbies, but sure enough, an hour later, he's finding all these things that he can connect with this person on. He gets really excited. Does the interview, and after the interview, he said they talked for more time on their hobbies and those topics and really connected more than they did on the technical stuff. That stuff was kind of shelfware to what they were talking about. Yeah, they talked about some tech, but they really felt like they connected when they talked about hobbies and their shared interests. So yeah, it was a little cyber stalkerish, but it was also better preparedness and making sure that they were on the same page. And think about this. I mean, it's not that surprising. This process is about a people connection. Again, this is social engineering for you to be the best position ever to get this job compared to other people. You stand out, not your resume, not your cover letter. I hire for the person. I can teach tech skills. I can't teach someone not to be an asshole after I've already hired them, or actually, I really hope I don't have to teach them to be an adult. And so this is kind of that similar to the concept of this attack chain of living off the land. I want my interview to feel so natural and so comfortable that I feel like I'm already part of this organization, or the person I'm interviewing already is. I want this traffic to kind of blend in and already be there. So as you get ready to kind of do that, get ready for those steps of actually doing those talks with people, do mock interviews with people, friends, family, hell, your dog. I don't care. Just practice talking. It's really important not to go into these things cold, and have questions prepared to answer and rehearse them so you feel comfortable and relaxed. If you don't know something, again, be honest. The expectation is not for you to know everything. And I purposefully ask for questions that people should be challenged to answer at the level I'm bringing them in to see how they would act. If they said, "Look, to be honest, I've never come across that," or "other people worked on that," I'm like, cool. That's better than any bullshitting that I will detect in under a second. I'd rather you be honest than to lie to me, because if you lie to me, you're immediately done. And so what are some of the questions that you should be prepared to ask for, right? Ask about their culture. What is the hiring person or the person you're interviewing with, what their day-to-day looks like, how it's spent between doing technical stuff and hands-on stuff, how much is company all hands meetings. You might find that there's an organization where they said, yeah, 20% of our time is in stand-up meetings. And you might be like, that's not going to work for me. So finding out about this culture and the day-to-day operations of the organization is going to be incredibly important. This is your chance to ask them during the interview process. I also asked the person, who I'm talking to, what gets you up every day to come to this job? Why Splunk? Like I asked the folks that I work with, why here? Like, you're well known, most of these people that were managers in tech in Silicon Valley. I said, why here? And I really pushed them to understand why they go to this job, because I want to see that they are engaged, that this is going to be, again, the right cultural fit for me. I also asked them kind of challenging questions at times. I might even say to them, hey, look, if there was one thing you can change at this organization in the short term, what would you change and why? And what would be the expected outcomes? Coming with questions like that. If I'm a hiring manager and I hear somebody putting me on my heels and making me think like this person's thinking, they're not just reciting off their resume. They're not just going through, I've done this, I've done that. I don't read off your resume. I know that. I want to know different things. I want to hear you ask me challenging questions, because I want to, again, engage with people on a human level. It's the icing on the cake. So, okay, you've done the interview, talk to somebody. What do you do next? I am a big fan of sending thank you notes on that same day. And if you can, make sure it's tailored to each person that you interviewed with, and reference things from your notes on the conversation. Do not copy and paste the same note to everyone. These will be forwarded and laughed at if you do. Each one's kind of bespoke and a different story. It shows you care and you are professional. As you go through this entire process, you need to be all in. Again, think about it as, I'm going to get this job. This job is mine. So don't just throw shit against the wall across multiple organizations with multiple people and see what sticks. It's spammy and unprofessional. So go in with intent, make things bespoke and to the individuals that you're speaking to. I also encourage be positive. Use confident language. Not that I hope I hear from you soon. Hope? No. I will talk to you soon. Say something like, I look forward to the next steps with this opportunity and to meeting the rest of the team. This level of not cockiness, but confidence that things went really well. It helps sell that in the mind of the receiver that, yeah, this person's serious about this. So none of that wishy-washy BS. If you want this job, get it, own it. Assume you've already had the job. And the whole point of this is just to go through the motions. Obviously, you're going to get the job, but you need to go through it with the most professional way possible. But going in with this confidence of almost seeing the game won is really important for you and the person that you're talking to show that this person's carrying themselves well. And so sometimes you might say, hey, look, I don't have the contact information. And this is something else I gave to somebody else recently. I just said, hey, look, talk to the recruiter. Say you wanted to send a thank you note to maybe some of the people that you interviewed with. You didn't have their contact information because, again, it went through JobVite or some applicant tracking system and it just ended up on your calendar. But again, you've done your homework, like I said in the prior steps. You do have the recruiter's email. You just say, hey, look, want to follow up. It was a pleasure speaking with everybody. Want to know more about different roles and the roles on the teams. Want to send you thank you notes to everybody that I talked to. Would you be comfortable sharing that, or would you want to forward it? It just shows that, again, you're being thoughtful on this whole process, that there's follow-up, that you're going to stand out against all those other applicants that are there. So that's just, again, small little details and touches as you go through this way that are going to help build on each other and get you the job that you want. So one of the things that comes up too is, and I'll jump to this, assuming you get to the point where they're talking about comp negotiations. I generally recommend pushing it towards the end. And a lot of this is changing now because what we found in all professional circles is that there's a lot of disparity and a lot of bias that gets put into pay bands, particularly around women and people of color. So thankfully that stuff's being removed. In states like Colorado and other states like California, you can't ask anybody, hey, how much do you want? Which is great. But if the subject does come up, don't ask where you're you don't have to ask, or you don't have to tell them what you're currently making. Think about what you do want. You should be thinking about yourself more than anything else. This is about you getting into the position. Money should be what you need and what want. So a lot of it is they start bringing it up early on. Say, one of the techniques that I've heard and learned and used is to say, I definitely do want to talk about the financials, but I want to understand more about the role and talk to a few more people. Maybe if you give me an idea of the pay scale, that would be great. And you ask them. But for right now, I just want to get through the process and we can talk about the money in the end. One, it sets it back a little bit so you can get through all the process to the point where, from a negotiation tactic, that money's the last thing. They're so confident and they're so one on you, they're likely going to pay a little bit more to get you. But if you start setting those barriers early on with some bias about what the financials are going to be, it screws up some of the negotiation process at the end. So that being said, I generally try to push that to the end. And again, a lot of that's changing because of the way that the laws are changing, thankfully. But you do want to kind of understand what's there. You want to look at what's available in these different pay bands for different places. Glassdoor, all these other, I think ZipRecruiter has it. Maybe I might be wrong on that one. I should have checked first. But you can find out generally for an associate, senior associate, manager, every level up, directors to CISO, what generally people are making per region, per area. Is it going to be an exact science? Probably not. But you should get an idea of what people in those positions are making. And maybe you have friends that are close enough sharing with what they make in similar roles. But getting into those discussions can be great. But I also urge you not to look at just the value of the dollar that comes in on the paycheck. Look at the entire comp. You might be getting RSUs or restricted stock units in some organizations. Again, you've done research way starting in this company. You're going to know where their stock prices are and if they're going to offer you stock, how it's performing, how it's performed year over date. Is there new products coming to market? What's Gartner saying about them? Are they in the Magic Quadrant? Are there chances that if you're offsetting some of your paycheck, that by getting stocks that vest in over a year on a high growth trajectory company, you might make more money there and it might be a better tax advantage. So there's different ways of looking at this. And again, talk to your professional tax advisors about a lot of this too. I mean, there's no reason not to say, hey, look, I'm getting this many in stock. It's going to vest over this period of time. Here's my paycheck. Here's my wife's or partner's current paycheck. What is this going to look like as we line up everything on our tax forms? It's a healthy conversation to have because you want to know what you're getting into and what your ultimate net take home is going to be. So again, look at those total comp packages. I also encourage people to know your pawns. So some folks might say, look, whether I get 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I don't care. But if you know you can use that as a negotiation technique, ask for 6 weeks. And they say, we don't offer that. Say, hey, look, something I really want. And this is probably in a gray area. I'm not saying lying and don't be, deceptive in it, but, use it as a negotiation tactic. So no, if you're not going to pay me as much as you want, I want more time off. And they go, well, okay, well, what if we give you more money? And you go, okay, I got back to where I wanted. What's wrong with that? So there might be other types of negotiation tactics like that can work. Maybe you don't need certain aspects of the healthcare plan because your partner or spouse or somebody else is providing a healthcare plan through work that's better than what you're getting offered at the current job. So maybe it's not that big of a deal. So as you line up all these things from healthcare, stock options, bonuses, total OTE, MBOs, sales commission, look at everything, weigh it all out, but know where you can give up to get. Because ultimately, this is about you, and you should be the focus of this and feel confident about that process. So let's hope that you got that awesome job now. You're getting the comp that you want, and you're off to the races. Sometimes during this process, you're not going to get every single at bat's not going to be a home run. So likely you want to understand why. I encourage people when they don't get a role, there's a reason. Get feedback. This now becomes a learning opportunity. And there's no reason not to ask the folks that were bringing you through the process, hey, can you give me some feedback on this? Was there something I said? Or, there's things I could have phrased better? Talk to them and build them. Because again, this is a good networking opportunity. They might not have that right fit for you now, but they might think about you down the road. And I've had that happen where I'm going back to like special counsel days. I've talked to them for years and it was always like, timing's not right. We always joked about working together until the time is right. But I had built my network with them. So when things were open and I was able to go in and do something, timing was everything, but I was already prepared because I'd already built that network. So there might be other open job recs now or in the future. So if you build this network, you might be able to get that job, 2 months from now, 3 months, or if their initial hire falls through. There could be an emergency in the family and that person has to withdraw from their candidate position. You want to make sure you're the next person in line. And you may want to ask yourself, was this a job you really wanted? Or was it practice? As you go through some of these, again, be honest and be, genuine in your process. But if it's something that you say, this is my backup school, so to speak, and this is your safety plan, that's a good opportunity that where again, you can practice all these motions. Again, we've gone through a lot of steps to get you the job. Every time that you go through one of these steps, it's a learning opportunity to do better next time. So think of that as practice. Don't kill yourself over it. I mean, it's not just, it's not the end of the world. Get out there, get the next step back, and learn from those past interviews of what you can do better on the next one. So with that, I am probably perfect on time. And I'm open to some Q&A and certainly connect with me. As I said, I'll put some resources out there on some of the stuff that I talked about. I'm kind of compiling a list. I've been working on it, but I wasn't ready by the time of the show today.
Hey, Doug, thanks so much for doing that talk. That was awesome.
So first question before we get to the real questions is someone wants to know where you got your t-shirt from because it's awesome.
Well, it's funny, actually. So speaking of like hiring people and having a good network, it actually came from, it got shipped, so that's a mug, but this is the actual mug because as I was running my team in Denver, the IR team, they got me and said, yeah, no, you're right. Let's do it in the dumbest way possible because it's easier for you. So this was kind of my passive aggressive mug that my staff got me. And now it became a t-shirt, but I got it online. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And then real question. I have a company offer who has laid their security staff recently as part of transformation. What are your thoughts or best advice?
I'm hoping because of an HR issue that was laid off, because that can be really dicey if they just anyway. Yeah, so they it's tough, right? And I've seen that some organizations will maybe they're going through different transformations, maybe they've had problem retaining talent, but we've seen that I would say a lot in security operations now is a lot of folks going on-prem to cloud and moving security operations there, or having different data sources. And that could be a challenge, and it could be also a growth opportunity. For those, I would want to find out, what types of training that they're going to go along to support that. Are they going to provide things for, SANS training about cloud technology and cloud security? Are they looking to be members of the local OWASP or Cloud Security Alliance? Are there things that you can find as resource? Say, hey, look, I'm going to come in. We're going to build this together, because it might have been a transformation. But if they're not, if they're just kind of hoping that somebody comes in to solve their problems, might not be a good fit. And sometimes I've seen that where you might say, okay, I'm going to only be here for 2 to 3 years. That's only part of my goal. I'm going to go in and do this and learn and then get out. That might be an opportunity as well. It really is going to depend on what's going on in that organization as they go through their changes.
Okay. And I have one more question, and I think we have another question that Megan wants us to ask. Before that, someone wants to know what your thoughts are on the gamification approach of recruiting.
Yeah, I think it could be good. Look, and I'll step back in and say, overall, I think the reason that I had to write shortcuts around this was to try to fix a broken system. I think it's not really well designed, particularly for folks in technology and cybersecurity, the way it's laid out now. Again, if you think away, cybersecurity has just been this kind of hodgepodge of a lot of different industries that have grown up together. And as we're getting into our formative years, it's kind of hard. It's kind of easier now to look back and say the hiring processes and practices have been pretty bad. And some of the other talks I'm going to be giving this year are about diversity, equity, and inclusion, how we have pretty much done a piss poor job of recruiting women, people of color, LGBTQ community, disabled. I mean, people who look like me tend to get jobs better, and that sucks. And that doesn't speak to the skills that I have. So I kind of like some of that gamification where it can actually show what people can do behind a keyboard, particularly in technical roles, as opposed to how, if it's a white guy's name sounding on a resume. So I like screening out some of those things. My preference would be if all applicant tracking systems and hiring practices remove anything that denoted nationality, gender, anything else, and it was more skill-based with outcomes with more gamification would be my preference.
So there was another question from a pro. Recruiters just ghost you. How are you supposed to get feedback?
I'm not sure I understand. Can you say it again?
So they're saying that recruiters, they don't respond, or they have an interview and they don't get any response. How are people supposed to get feedback if they don't get responses from the recruiter?
Yeah, that sucks. Sometimes what I've found with that is, again, because the way that I do the recon and try to find my way in is making sure I have, again, some insider that I can maybe say, hey, look, I'm not getting any feedback. Can you maybe find out what occurred? And maybe and those people could be more successful making some lateral discussions with inside the org, or me to give me feedback. When it comes to working with outside recruiters, it's tough. There's a lot of ones that just try to fill their applicant database, say, hey, we have over this many cybersecurity candidates, and they don't really do the legwork. They don't give you feedback. So as you interview recruiters that might represent you, make sure you're finding ones that will, you can say straight up, look, as you're shopping me around, how are you doing this? I want to see what you're sending on behalf of me, because a lot of times they'll take all your information, put it on their cover letter without your name. It's called a blind submission. So you want to know what's being put out there about you that is accurate. And you say, hey, look, you're going to do this. I need feedback. It has to be part of the process.
Are there any mock interview services that you recommend?
Well, yes, that's actually it's like very serendipitous that came up. So a couple of things that I'm actually working on are those. So to DEF CON Blue Team Village, we're doing that now as kind of an initial cohorts of folks that were doing it. Obviously, with things coming up this summer, everything's kind of in flux, but I do want to talk to the team tomorrow that we're working on, say, hey, how are we going to do this at DEF CON in Vegas, or if it's remote? I think it's something we need to do more of in just about every conference. And I'm looking for ways to kind of spearhead those villages and workshops to do it, because I know more folks have been doing that. Leslie Carhart's been doing it. Alyssa's been doing it. So I would like to see more of that, but it's kind of scattered right now, which is unfortunate. But if you can check out Blue Team Village Discord, there's stuff there. At Colorado Equals Security, it's where you can find me most of the time, is the Slack channel. We're starting to put together some stuff. Again, a lot of stuff is really early, but we're definitely working more on that in 2 stages of resume review, LinkedIn review, and then mock interviews.
Awesome. Cool. And I'm not really seeing much for questions coming through at this point. People have pointed out, though, that the Twitter and I believe the LinkedIn that you have on your page is incorrect on the slide. There's the A between Douglas and Brush, and that's not there.
Yeah, the Twitter's wrong.
Okay. And
go ahead.
I also just wanted to ask real quick, Douglas, if you would mind posting a PDF version of your slides into the slide channel in Discord that's right above the live chat. That way we can give it out to the attendees.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Doug, I just wanted to say thank you again for coming and being part of this community today on the Wild West Hackin Cast. I think Megan can attest to this. We worked for a company a couple of years ago that was less than desirable. And when I left that company, I decided to take some time and really decide what I wanted to do, right? And I know you brought this up. But sometimes not getting the job is a blessing, right?
Yeah. I've kicked myself in the butt where I felt like, oh man, I lost opportunity. And then I was like, oh, thank God that didn't happen.
Exactly.
I think, a lot of people don't have the ability, with supporting families and things like that, to be able to turn down a position or, be able to take time. But it definitely, when you do find the right place, like we have found here, it makes a whole difference. I mean, it doesn't feel like work at all. We get to do really cool things with a really cool community. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I was gonna say, you said that idea too. It's like, it's easier to find a job when you have one. And when you're caught flat-footed, and the last couple, 15 months have not been easy for a lot of people. I know a lot of people that downsized, reorg, restructured out, whatever happened, and then to be looking in the middle of a really trying time when you can't meet in person is terribly frustrating. So again, that extent of just building that network becomes so important, and that it's to always kind of be looking, knowing what's out there. You don't have to be, going through the full interview process all the time, but just know where your opportunities lie. So if you're just not caught flat-footed and being able to move on your own terms instead of somebody else's.
Awesome. Well, I see here we just passed the top of the hour. So I do want to, again, thank everybody for attending today. Thank you to Doug for the presentation. This was awesome.
If you have a chance, go over and take a look at our website, wildwesthackinfest.com. There's all kinds of fun things to look at there. We have some other upcoming webcasts, as well as some awesome virtual training and person training, and of course, the Wild West Hackin Fest. So,
oh yeah, and we'll be updating our training schedule really soon as well. So make sure you keep an eye on that.
Awesome.
And all right, and we will see you guys in the next one.
All right.
Have a great day, everybody.
Have a good one. Bye, Doug. Thanks.
Bye.
Yep.